is on bullying. Our objective today is to understand what bullying is and basically what we do in the school to try to prevent it, what we do in the school to try to solve it when issues occur. Now, one of the things we've been doing over the last couple of years, which has certainly has helped us in terms of our bullying, is we've introduced this young man here, Carlos Martín, into our school life. Carlos es el responsable del área de violencia de género y menores de la Guardia Civil de Tres Cantos. That's his work. Basically, he liaises with King's College, and he's been in about 4 or 5 times now to give presentations to the students, all the students from Year 7 right the way through to Year 13, about what he does and about issues pertaining to these things. He's done things related to the internet, to bullying on the internet, which I know that everybody's interested in, and today he's going to do some presentations on bullying to the Year 7s and the Year 11s. Not particularly any particular reason why it's those pupils. The Year 11s is simply because they have PSHE today, Year 5s, not because we are particularly concerned that they have any particular issues. Now, the reason we're approaching this subject of bullying is not because suddenly we feel we've got this massive issue in King's College of bullying. It's purely because it is anti-bullying week worldwide. I know in the United States, I think they have theirs a little bit earlier in October, but in the UK certainly it is in November. One of the reasons they put it in November is specifically because it's the worst time of year for pupil behaviour in schools. The penultimate Thursday, statistically in the UK, the penultimate Thursday in November is the worst day for behaviour. Thursdays is always the worst days for behaviour. Mondays they're too tired to get into any trouble. Fridays they're too happy, and it's Thursdays that is the day that they're not really into it. So, having introduced Carlos, I'd like to. Carlos is going to just talk very briefly about his role in the Guardia Civil.
Hello, good morning. Everybody understand Spanish? Menos mal. Because my English is very bad and I don't want to be your bullying's object. ¿No? Bueno, pues como bien ha dicho Tom, ya llevo bastante tiempo colaborando con el King's College. Es una gran suerte para mí de poder acercarme a los chicos y también les puedo tutear, ¿verdad? Que yo soy todo gente joven, y también a vosotros, ¿no? Desde hace 3 años estamos llevando a cabo un plan de prevención y educación, sobre todo en 3 problemáticas que más nos preocupa desde el aspecto policial. Cada vez estamos detectando a una edad más temprana que los chicos empiezan a tener bastantes problemas, empiezan a ser víctimas y autores en delitos que antes solamente nos preocupaban los adultos. Por ejemplo, violencia de género y violencia doméstica. Cada vez empiezan a tener relaciones de pareja bastante más temprano y empiezan a tener problemas que ni siquiera ellos a veces detectan. Tienen bastante normalizada la violencia debido a la sociedad en la que vivimos, y es importante atacar desde la raíz ese problema que sin duda es un problema de base. También es muy importante la prevención que hago con los padres en todos los centros escolares. Aparte de estos colegios, también llevo este programa de prevención en otros 6 centros en Tres Cantos, ya que vosotros sois un modelo a seguir bastante más importante del que pensáis. Vuestros hijos os tienen como sus héroes, sus heroínas, aunque a veces no lo piensen, aunque a veces, o por lo menos no os lo expresen, mejor dicho. Que digan, papá, mamá, estoy harto de ti, venga, vete por ahí, estás muy anticuado, no estás a la moda con las nuevas tecnologías. Sin duda sois su modelo a seguir. Y por otro lado, esta evolución tecnológica que está afectando tanto a nuestra sociedad, positivamente en algunos aspectos, pero en otros casos, por desgracia, negativamente. Es concienciar a los chicos que ellos que piensan que saben de todo, pues que no saben tanto, y sobre todo los riesgos que tiene el navegar por internet, el colgar ciertos temas en la red, qué consecuencias tienen. Sobre todo empezar a avisarles ya desde, como he dicho, una edad temprana. Lo ideal es que a partir de los 14 años meterles bastante más miedo, entre comillas ese miedo, porque ya en esa edad de 14 años ya empieza a ser una edad de responsabilidad penal, es decir, ya no estáis solo vosotros para responder ante sus hechos, ahora ya ellos entienden que esos hechos tienen consecuencias. Pero como bien he dicho al principio, no detectan muchas veces esas situaciones que pueden generar riesgo para ellos o riesgo para otros compañeros. Sobre todo esas 3 temáticas que estamos intentando reforzar y complementar con la educación que reciben en el King's College. Por cierto, enhorabuena porque es un centro ejemplar para para traer a los chicos. Es el centro de Tres Cantos que menos problemas nos da a nosotros, que menos tengo que intervenir. Entonces sí que el buen hacer, la buena labor de profesorado se deja entrever. Esos tres temas que más nos está afectando, como os he dicho al principio, es violencia de género y violencia doméstica, por un lado. Otro sería prevención en la red, delitos informáticos, sobre todo ahí atacamos 6 delitos que son los que más nos preocupan. Vienen a ser violación de la correspondencia, es decir, meterse en el correo electrónico de una persona sin su consentimiento. 3 de cada 4 adolescentes españoles o ciudadanos de este país entre 14 y 17 años reconocen haberse metido en el correo electrónico de otra persona sin su consentimiento. Usurpación del estado civil, que es suplantación de la identidad. Cada vez se están haciendo pasar por otras personas, sobre todo a través de las redes sociales. Crean muchos perfiles falsos en una red social y al fin y al cabo eso es bullying. Después lo que hacen es pues, acosar a la persona que han falseado ese perfil, ¿verdad? Y después tenemos el gran problema que cada vez aumenta más de sexting y sextorsión. Sexting es el intercambio de imágenes eróticas o subidas de tono entre una pareja. Suele ser a través del teléfono móvil y 2 de cada 10 parejas adolescentes entre 14 y 17 años realizan sexting. Eso no es un delito. El delito se comete cuando tienen algún problema entre ellos y alguno de los dos, sobre todo suele ser el chico, hace públicas esas imágenes sin el consentimiento de otra persona y ahí sí que se comete un delito. El problema es que solamente se denuncia 1 de cada 10 episodios de sexting que tenemos. Y después extorsión, este sí que cada vez se está llevando más a cabo. Sobre todo siempre de hombre hacia la mujer, chicos mayores con chicas más jovencillas, pues extorsionan, coaccionan, chantajean a la chica con que haga, sobre todo que siga manteniendo relaciones sexuales con él o que las empiece a mantener si no quiere que él cuelgue en la red, que haga públicas pues, fotos que tiene de ella íntimas, vídeos, etc. Eso sí que ellos están empezando a concienciarse bastante. Sobre todo una de las cosas que intentamos desde el centro y yo reforzar es que en el momento que sale de mi teléfono móvil o de mi ordenador esa foto o esa frase, eso ya no hay vuelta atrás. Eso no se borra. Ellos se pensaban que le das...
Aunque ahora hay una red social que permite borrarlo todo, ¿eh?
Sí, pero aún así, a nivel yo les informo a ellos, a nivel legal, la ley dice que cualquier red social, cualquier portal de internet, cualquier página web tiene obligación por ley de tener un macroservidor donde guardar esa información. Más que nada porque si ellos están implicados en un delito, como autor o como víctimas, nosotros, yo en este caso como Guardia Civil, tengo la potestad de solicitar un mandamiento judicial al juzgado para que me dé toda la información de ese correo electrónico. Entonces hay que guardarlo. En el momento que sale de nuestro teléfono móvil, de nuestro ordenador, no hay vuelta atrás. Es ya complicado el controlar. Y después les hablo también de phishing, que esto sí que sobre todo nos afecta más a los adultos, todo lo que es ciberpesca. Los phishers son hackers informáticos, lo que hacen es pescar contraseñas en la red y cada vez hay más estafas, sobre todo a nivel bancario, con la población adulta, pero también con adolescentes que empiezan a manejar tarjetas de débito, sobre todo la Caixa, algunos bancos a partir de los 16 años, 17, 18, te da la opción de que tú le puedas tener una tarjeta de débito a tu hijo y aunque sea menor de edad, si te firmas una autorización, pueden empezar a manejar ya por internet. Entonces están aprovechándose de eso y con mucha publicidad engañosa, sobre todo el te regalo, aquí no se regala nada, y a la hora de realizar compras, sí que está pasando. Y grooming es lo que más nos está preocupando. Por suerte Tres Cantos no es una población que se dé muchos casos. En el año 2012 se dieron 3 casos que atajamos enseguida, pero Madrid sí que es la comunidad después de Valencia que más está dando. El grooming es prácticas online de ciertos adultos para ganarse la confianza de menores. Se hacen pasar por chicos, lo que hacen es pescar IDs, o sea, contraseña más correo electrónico de un adolescente que está en una página web, en una red social, sobre todo 20 y Facebook son las más utilizadas por ellos. Y se hace pasar por adolescentes para conectar con, sobre todo, preadolescentes, casi siempre chicas, que están iniciándose en el mundo de internet, que pasan mucho tiempo solas, que suelen ser hijas únicas, que pasan muchos minutos, muchas horas delante del ordenador y que no reciben ningún tipo de control, ya no parental, sino de órganos externos, que sea el colegio, amigos, etc. Entonces ven en ese ciberamigo, en ese groomer, al amigo que nunca han tenido y se aprovechan de ello estos groomers. Y después acabamos, hoy voy a llevarles, vamos a hablar de bullying. El bullying no lo había tocado hasta la fecha con el King's College porque también el King's colabora con la policía local, con el sargento Gerardo, que es un formidable profesional y una mejor persona que lleva ya pues, 7 años también llevando prevención en Tres Cantos. pero como Tom me cae muy mal, pues me ha convencido para que este año también podamos aportar este granito de arena para esta semana del acoso escolar en Inglaterra, pues también vamos a vivir aquí en Tres Cantos. Todo esto de lo que he hablado lo llevo a cabo con los padres en una charla bastante más extensa, de unas hora y media, 2 horas aproximadamente. Acordaré con Tom pues este año llevarla a cabo con vosotros cuando mejor os venga y que venga gente, porque a mí pasado la dimos y estuvimos 8 o 10 solamente.
Sí, sí.
Entonces, a ver si este año hay más afluencia y podemos hablar, sobre todo, que aprendáis vosotros cosas, que seguro que algunas personas conocíais, pero también aprender yo cosas con vosotros. Muchas gracias.
When I asked Carlos if he wanted to speak this morning, he said, no, just introduce me, that's all, I won't say anything. 15 minutos después, ya también no. Okay, basically this is the sort of the old idea that everybody has of bullying. It's the old picture from perhaps when we were at school, of the big thug, the big heavy thug, and the poor little boy who's in a corner and he's having to give his pocket money to the big boy because otherwise the big boy will punch him. Well, this isn't the image of bullying that we have anymore. This isn't the image, certainly not the image in King's College. We don't have big thugs like that roaming around the building threatening little boys. It just doesn't happen. Our students are not like that. And one of the reasons they're not like that are really the core values that we're trying to inculcate in the pupils and the core values that they bring to school as well. These kind of values, and particularly the first 4 of kindness, integrity, tolerance, open-mindedness, these are all values that they bring that stop them from becoming bullies. Now all these core values together, if a pupil has these qualities, it's unlikely they're going to be bullied. If you've got all these kind of qualities of independence, of honesty, it's unlikely you're going to be the sort of pupil that's going to be bullied. So working on these core values with the pupils, which we do regularly, hopefully we can avoid pupils becoming bullies, and at the same time we can also encourage the students to behave in a certain way where they're less likely to be bullied. So what is bullying? Well, bullying is a willful, conscious desire to hurt another and put him under stress. So it's a deliberate act. It's a deliberate act of attitude, of a negative attitude towards another student. Bullying at King's College is defined as any action that willfully causes distress upon another member of the school and community and negatively affects the way they feel about school life. So that's our that's the King's College interpretation of bullying. There's a number of ways in which you can look at it, but we feel that covers all our bases. All this presentation now is on these papers here. There's a number spread around if you haven't got one. That version is in Spanish.
Tom, this type of behaviour is supposed to be continuous or just once? You consider it bullying?
For it to be bullying, it tends to be continuous. It tends to be continuous. But there's always that interpretation. If it's a one-off act and it's a deliberate act to make life very unpleasant for somebody, we can still consider that to be bullying. But it tends to be a conscious, consistent behaviour over a period of time. So the types of the forms of bullying, these are the sort of 5 forms of bullying. I say 4 because 10 years ago there were only 4 forms of bullying. Cyberbullying is the newest one. Gesture bullying, it tends to be things like threats more than anything else. Suggestions that something is going to happen if a student doesn't do this. Verbal bullying was obviously it's insults, it's rudeness. Physical bullying is obviously something where somebody is hitting somebody else or stealing their equipment or breaking something that belongs to that student. Exclusion, this tends to be more of a female act than a male act. It's where they leave somebody out of the group. And that can be particularly unpleasant because it's usually done by a group of friends towards one member of their friendship group who they feel should no longer form part of their group. Very difficult one to detect and a very complicated one, the exclusion bullying. And cyberbullying, of course, is very new, and we have done a lot of work on that over the last year. particularly as we did have an incident last year that we had to solve, and it became quite a serious incident. And as a result, we brought in this year, we brought in Carlos last year to do a presentation, and we also brought in Jonathan Taylor from the UK, who did a presentation to all the students this year in September on cyberbullying. So what are our aims? What are we trying to do as a school? We want to have a consistent response to bullying incidents. That's why any bullying incidents that happen in the secondary school, I become involved in immediately, so that we make sure that we're always responding in the same way. We're not responding in a different way because there's different people responsible for the issues. We want to create a safe environment for our pupils so that they feel comfortable, they want to come to school and they don't feel uncomfortable about coming into school. To create an environment where the types of bullying are rejected, particularly where they're rejected by the pupils. That's our objective, is really to make sure that the pupils reject any form of bullying and don't accept it when they see it. To provide an education about bullying, which we do in our PSHE lessons, which we've done through Carlos and through Jonathan Taylor. To provide a support system for parents and pupils when incidents do occur, that you feel that you can approach the school, and the pupils themselves feel that they can approach the school and approach their teachers. To have a clear outline of the procedures used, to encourage pupils to be open and report bullying incidents, which is not an easy thing to do, because they often feel it will get worse if they report something, whereas that isn't the case, because we do have procedures whereby we can ensure that they're safe, and to provide clear responsibilities to staff so that teachers know exactly what it is their role is and what they need to do. So this is the advice that we actually give to staff. We give them a section of immediate responses to bullying, so when something happens, what they have to do, what the procedures is they have to follow. They've got a set of guidelines for listening to victims, guidelines for working with bullies as well, because quite often bullies need support as well. There's a reason why they're bullying. Quite often it's basic insecurities that they have, and so in many ways they need to be supported as well. And a set of procedures for dealing with incidents, and the sanctions that we have as well for all the pupils that are involved. Our anti-bullying strategies, we have many anti-bullying strategies, some are interlinked with various other programs. Our objective as a school, and one of our great successes as a school, is our openness between the pupils and the staff and their relationships. They're very, the relationships between staff and pupils have always been recognised by inspection teams that come into school as being very, very strong, very, very positive. And I think that's one of the main ways that we're able to protect our students from bullying. We try to set ourselves up as positive role models. That means not allowing ourselves to get into situations where the students could consider that we are acting in a bullying manner, so that hopefully they respond in the same sort of way. We have a PSHE and assembly program, which bullying, we don't approach the subject every single week, but we do talk a lot about the relationships and the way in which people should deal with other people, and of course using the core values helps to encourage that atmosphere. Creating a positive atmosphere that helps pupils develop positive self-esteem, again coming back to those core values of creating students that feel confident in themselves. We do inset for staff on bullying, so that's sort of almost lessons, if you like, for the teachers on how to deal with, how to recognise bullying when it occurs in school. And we have prefects in tutor time supporting and advising pupils. This morning, in fact, for the year 10s and 11s, we have prefects going into their PSHE, not their PSHE lessons, into their registration lesson for the first 15 minutes this morning, and they're giving a presentation on bullying. So the prefects themselves are talking to the students on bullying. Hopefully, again, coming at it from a different angle from the teachers, hopefully we're able to create this sort of open atmosphere where pupils feel that they're supported, not just from the teachers, but from each other as well. As I said, down here we train the prefect body to look for and handle appropriately any sort of behaviours that may be perceived as bullying. We don't do it specifically for bullying, but any behaviours that they see might be inappropriate, and they then would report those to us. The use of the school counsellor, we have two excellent school counsellors that are working with us now on Mondays and Thursdays, and to to support the bullies and the bullied, we'll be using those school counsellors over the next few years. And obviously we spoke before about the programme of visiting speakers, including Carlos. So who are the people responsible for pupil welfare, because obviously bullying comes under that. Well, we have here the tutor is the first person. That's the first person to approach, because the tutor is the person that's most likely to notice whether the behaviour of the student has changed slightly. If they are acting in a different way or responding in a different way within their group. If in registration they're suddenly sitting separately from everybody else. So the tutor is the first person that would be aware of an issue. The pastoral coordinator, we have the year 10-11 pastoral coordinator at the back there, Mrs. Gavitas. They're the person that would then be reported to from the tutor. You then have me as the head of the secondary school, a teacher, because a teacher may well pick up on something when they're asking the pupils to get into groups, and everybody gets into groups and there's one person that's not in a group. If that happens regularly, it might happen now and again to everybody, but if it happens regularly to the same person, that teacher would obviously respond by letting the tutor or the coordinator know. The school counsellor, the school nurse, who's very interested in this sort of thing, she's very good at picking up on these type of issues, and often when the pupils are feeling like they're being left out, they'll go to Nikki the nurse because they feel they will be nicely supported by her, and she's very good on that sort of thing.
Tom, who's the school counsellor?
The school counsellor, it's Ichazo Zembrero, she's called. She really started in the last month. She comes in on a Monday and on a Thursday, and she deals with secondary students mostly on a Monday.
Is she a psychologist?
Yes. Yeah. We tend to use the word school counsellor because it's less frightening than the term psychologist.
Could you facilitate her email?
Sorry?
Could you facilitate her email or some contact?
Yes, I have no reason why not.
For all those people, no?
Yeah. And all these people on here, if you know their first name and their second name, the email is the same. It's all the same King's College email. So it's.
So it's spelling them, doesn't it?
Yeah, but if you have a look in your child's homework diary, it has all the email addresses in there. So on about I think it's page 18.
It's on the website as well.
And on the website as well. So if you put the first name dot second name and it's there. So the deputy head, Charlie Hilson, who's here, and the head teacher. And down here we have the designated persons responsible for safeguarding of pupils. That's Paul Parkinson in the primary and Paul McNally in the secondary school. Paul McNally, most people will know, he's been in the school about 20 years. He's actually responsible for applications to universities, for UCAS, but he's also the person that's trained in the safeguarding of pupils. So any serious issues involving bullying, he would also become involved as well. So advice and guidelines that we would give to the pupils. The communication aspect is vital. It's so important that they do speak about the topic and speak to people. They speak to their parents, they speak to other pupils, anybody. They need to talk about it. They need to talk about it with their friends, and it's very important that we encourage that openness. That we don't say to them, no, don't tell anybody about it. Keep it to yourself and just battle your way through. They need to be able to feel as if they've got people that they can turn to and speak about. Never keep the information to yourself. Try not to show that you are upset. Obviously the bullies, if they are bullying somebody, they're doing it for a reason. They want a reaction. And so if you show that they don't care, they're not likely to get that reaction, and therefore the bullying will stop very, very quickly. Because if it's ignored, the person's not getting the reaction that they want. Recognise that all pupils are different. This comes back to our core values of tolerance, understanding that other people are different, and so therefore we all have different things, all have things that we should be proud of. Do not stand by and allow somebody to be bullied. Again, it's not an easy one, but we do try and encourage the pupils to step in when they see something that they think is wrong, that they think is unpleasant for another member of the community. If you are afraid to speak out, make a note of the bullying and post it under a teacher's door. All different ideas then for the pupils just to communicate to us that this incident is happening. And they always feel much better once they've talked about it and they've explained how they feel. And finally, the advice and guidelines for parents. Watch for possible signs of bullying. Watch to see if your child's reacting differently, if they're quiet, if they're on the internet a little bit too much, and as soon as you come in they're sort of closing it down. It might suggest that they're involved in conversations that they shouldn't really be involved in. Take an active interest in your child's social life. Not an overactive interest, but make sure you're aware of what they're doing at the weekends and where they're going and who they're going with. Encourage your child to have open lines of communication, so always encourage them to speak to you, to talk about any issues that they may have. If you suspect your child is being bullied, reassure them that there's nothing wrong with them. They've not done anything wrong in these situations, and contact the school. Contact the tutor, contact the pastoral coordinator, or contact me, so that we can begin to work with the student. Even if the bullying is occurring outside of school. If it's occurring outside of school but it involves two members of our school community, it is our responsibility to be involved as well, because if it's affecting the way they feel when they come to school, we really need to be involved. And even if it's being bullied by somebody outside of school that's nothing to do with school, it's still important that we know about it so we're able to support the student when they're in school. If the bullying persists, keep a written record. Keep a written record that you can provide for us. Do not encourage your child to fight back. The old-fashioned, well, if they hit you, you hit them back, and then they'll never do it again. None of that, because they might end up then being suspended from school themselves for fighting or for punching. We do not accept any forms of violence in the school, so please do not encourage your child to thump anybody. And trust the school. Trust that we will do the right thing and we will follow it through. Bullying is very complicated. It's not a simple, straightforward issue of one thug and one little guy. Sometimes now we even get the situations which I don't remember occurring when I was at school, but it seems to now where we get inverted bullying, where it's the little guy that constantly goes for the big guy, constantly annoys them, says things to them, insults them, in order to get a reaction from the big guy. And then when the big guy reacts and overreacts, we can potentially get a very unpleasant incident. So it's a complicated issue, the bullying issue. But as I said before, the most important thing, as far as I'm concerned, is the communication from the pupils to the school, from the parents to the school, and from the school back to the parents. Okay, if anybody's got any questions they'd like to ask.
So you've spoken a lot about advice and guidelines, but you haven't really gone into the procedures. What do you do when you come across a suspected bullying incident?
Okay, the first thing we do is we speak to the individual involved, the student that feels they're being bullied. We get them to write a statement. We have these statements that they fill in the gaps, and they fill in and explain how they feel and what has happened over the last whatever much time it was. They then sign it. We then bring in the person that they've said has been involved in the bullying and talk to them about what has happened, what this person has said, how this person is feeling about what's happened, and get that student then to write a statement. Now then, obviously we then go into sanctions. What are we going to do? What's the level of punishment? The sanctions are that we have a number of sanctions that we can use. In the first instance, for example, there was an incident yesterday. The year coordinator felt all that was needed was a warning to those particular students. It's the first time they'd been involved in something of this nature. She felt a warning to them that the next time this happens, their parents would be involved, and there would be a meeting between them and their parents, and we felt that was enough. But obviously, if somebody's been involved in it previously, then we have sanctions up to being suspended from school and even being asked to leave the school.
Tom, has that ever happened? Have you ever gone that far? Have you ever experienced?
Yes.
You have?
Yeah.
Is it serious?
Yeah. I mean, the situations as it happened the last time that happened, it was with a pupil from our school, with somebody that was not actually part of our school community, but it was the way in which this person was acting towards other people that we felt was inappropriate for the school, and so we felt we got into a situation where there'd been warning after warning after warning. There'd been suspensions from school, and this final issue occurred, and we felt it was time that student found another school.
Yes, it seems to me to quite difficult to differentiate between just kids, behavior and the way the way they treat. I mean, they communicate among them quite rough. And how do we differentiate that from bullying?
It's a very fine line, and what some people would consider to be bullying, others might consider to be just an argument with two friends. Hopefully, after being involved in this for sort of 25 years, I feel I've got more or less a handle on it. But there are still situations that occur where it's difficult to know how the relationship works, and it's really just speaking to the students. Both sets of students, you get a sense of how their relationship is, and whether it is one person that is too powerful in the relationship and too controlling in the relationship, and therefore it is a case of bullying, or whether it's simply that two boys playing in a football match, they happen not to get on very well anyway, they're not particularly good friends. One person kicks the other one by accident, the other one thinks he's doing it deliberately, and so he comes back, and in that situation we're dealing with a fight between two people. That's not a case of bullying. But it's not easy to really define it. There are some cases where it's very, very straightforward, where it's a student that's quite clearly targeting another student and really making life unpleasant for that student in many different ways. It might be hiding their bag, it might be taking their books, it might be insulting them regularly, it might be every time they see them in the corridor saying something that's unpleasant to them. In that case it's very straightforward. But particularly when it's involving people from the same social group, it's much more complicated.
In the reaction for kids that feel like they're being bullied, and in the values you've said, there's nothing about respect, and I think a lot of it has to do with the respect that the kids have for themselves and the respect that they have for other children.
Yeah.
And one of the second to the last item said, don't fight back. And I know that the kids, they feel like, if I go tell a teacher, the bullying is going to get worse, because and it's a microcosm for life. I mean, there are tiburones en el trabajo.
Absolutely,
And part of me agrees with you and says, okay, we don't want to have them fight back. But frankly, another part of me says, my kid has to earn the respect of his peers and has to have the strength of character to say, hasta aquí.
Absolutely,
and no more.
But when I say don't fight back,
kid,
I mean not physical. I do believe that they've got to stand up for themselves, and they've got to be assertive in the way in which they behave towards the bully, and say to the bully, this is unacceptable. The way in which you're behaving towards me is not acceptable. I'm not going to put up with this. But when I say fight back, I mean physically fight back. It's not argue back. It's not discuss situations with the bully. It's not run away from the bully situation. I'm saying if they feel they need the support, it's very important that they do seek our support. A Year 7 student, for example, has got a long way before he's going out and finding the sharks in his workplace that are going to make life difficult for him. He's got a lot of things to go through before that time. At the moment, he may well need a lot more support than a Year 11 student. And really, when they get past Year 9, incidents of behaviour on one student towards another student are very, very small. They tend to have gone through that process. Our incidents of bullying tend to be much more in the lower school than in the upper school. It's Year 7, it's Year 8. It's finding their place within the relationships of their groups. It's wanting to have a bit of power, wanting to have a bit of control, but not having too much power, not having too much control. It's balancing those relationships. It's not an easy process for them to go through. And the more friends or the more social situations they have, the more difficult the process is for them. Karen?
Would it be possible I remember during the after-school activities or extracurricular, there was a self-defense class. I don't know if it ended up happening or not.
Yeah.
But it seems to me, especially for girls, it's such a terrific initiative. And I know that, at least when I was young, I did it once. And I remember it's just an issue of mentality and gaining confidence, really, rather than techniques. Would it be possible to ever do once a month or 2 times, or sort of during lunchtime offer that occasionally, even if it was a special incident 1 or 2 times, to help foster that learning and that confidence?
Yeah, all those things are possible, and last year we did have a member of staff that was involved in that kind of thing, and he did do some workshops with the sixth form students particularly. To be absolutely honest, I'm not a huge fan of that sort of thing, of self-defence, whether it be for girls, whether it be for boys. I feel much more comfortable with them developing their communication skills and their ability to discuss situations, their ability to be assertive, that word assertive, in situations, to not allow other students to impose themselves on them, but not to respond in a physical way, but to respond in a confident and clear.
Although it could be. It could be a workshop that is not self-defense, physical, how you respect, but it's change the wording.
Yeah, we do work on it in PSHE. In fact, I think it was last week in PSHE with the year 10s. This was we are working on assertiveness against aggression. It's on various different topics that involve the way in which we respond, how we should respond to certain circumstances and certain situations. And it's important that we help our students to learn how to respond to those sort of situations. We're very lucky here because you're teaching them at home. It's not like I speak to friends from the UK about the way in which their students are in their schools, and it's a very, very complicated business, and they're dealing all the time with issues both within the classroom and outside the classroom and in the local town, all involving their students. Here we have good students coming into school with good sets of values that understand the difference between right and wrong and know how they should react and how they should respond. So we have it's a much easier job for us in order to work with them on developing their characters and developing their personalities so that they're able to respond to people that they feel are approaching them in the wrong way.
What about exclusion? Exclusion. I mean, this is a very complicated form of bullying and very difficult to understand and to tell how to react to that.
It is. It's very difficult, and it's impossible as a school. It's impossible for us to go to a group of girls and say, you have to include this girl. She has to be included, because that will only make the situation worse. So again, it's a situation where we need to sit down with the people, the parties involved, and although she may be excluded from a group, it's usually because one leader within that group has decided that that person needs to be excluded. So it's a matter of getting those two people together and trying to rebuild their relationship, because obviously if they were at some stage part of the same group, they did have a relationship. But it must be that somebody has done something, said something that the other person didn't like, and so as a result things have fallen apart. Some of the students are able to repair it on their own. They're able to repair it. Some students, their relationships change. They start off in year 7 with one group of friends, and by the time they get to year 13 they totally change their friends, partly because of things that may have occurred during that time.
You see, to be focusing the issue of excluding people just from the point of view of the girls. And actually now, in year 7, the first year 7, girls are becoming very hard with boys, excluding them everywhere. Yesterday my boy was heavily insulted by a girl just because he was a boy. I think you should consider that too. Your sexual education is very good, especially in biology, but I think you're missing the part of the psychology of the girls, the very young girls, how they are feeling now and how they react towards the boys. And they are feeling quite excluded too, and they don't understand why.
So you're saying the boys are feeling excluded from the girls?
Yes.
Obviously, it's very difficult.
And even insulted.
Yeah.
Just because they are boys.
Yeah.
I don't want to touch you. You're disgusting.
Yeah. And those kind of comments are comments that you will hear now and again from boys towards girls and from girls towards boys. Obviously, the year 7, year 8, year 9, when the girls are going through many chemical, physical changes, getting to a stage where they're becoming women, their reaction is going to be slightly extreme.
Yes.
Now, obviously, we need to work with those students, and if we know about those situations, we will work with those boys. That situation I didn't know about.
Before the problem happens, I think you can take some workshops or classes just to explain how they are feeling now. Not the physical changes that you have, and you have done it well, but what is happening with them, why they feel like that. because they are becoming very excluded one from the others and insulted between them.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully in our PSHE sessions that we do with the Year 7s, 8s and 9s, they don't actually have a PSHE lesson, but in the mornings in registration, each week they have a PSHE session where the tutor works with them on a particular issue. Sometimes it might be the exams, sometimes it might be, well, it could be any particular topic. Now, I can't remember offhand whether that sort of issue is part of the Year 7 programme. I know that bullying will be definitely part of the programme. So hopefully that would be included in that.
So